Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday. It's Friday. We're gonna look at people's techniques and give a quick assessment of them. If you guys are interested in submitting videos for this show, I know I've had a lot of questions about it, so we're gonna address this right here, right now. Calgary Barbell 2 at gmail.com. That's Calgary Barbell 2 at gmail.com. So our first video submission today comes from Juan. Now Juan's doing some deadlifts here, and the biggest thing I'm noticing is that his hips kind of raise slightly just as he initiates the movement before the bar leaves the floor. So this is a common fault, and this is something we generally want to try to address. One of the ways that we try to do this is by being a little bit more patient off the floor. A lot of times when we rush it, it's a little bit easier to lose position and start from a less than optimal position. That might make it a little bit easier off the floor, generally going to cause us some issues at lockout. But, so being patient. And the other thing I would try, Juan, is I would actually try setting your hips a little bit higher and see if you're just reverting to a stronger starting position. If you're not losing back extension and you're not losing any bracing through the trunk, and you're able to start with your hips at that height and still be nice and smooth through to lockout, then maybe you're just defaulting to a little bit of a stronger position. The issue with starting lower, defaulting to that position, and then starting there is the amount of hip shift that you'll get will put you at different starting points sometimes. So in a meet or a competition setting, that's less than ideal, because your starting point is going to be less consistent because it's dynamic, it's changing each time. Whereas if you can really nail down that position and start from the same place every time, that should help you be more consistent and be a little bit better able to pull into your position and brace your position and really start with a good amount of acceleration and a good amount of tension in your whole body. Now in this next video submission from Dean, we're seeing a pretty similar thing. Now he sent two videos, one from a front angle, one from a side angle. The front angle I watched and thought, okay, don't really see much wrong with that. Now I watched this video from the side angle, and we can see he's got a very similar issue to what was happening to Juan. Now I wanted to put this video in here specifically because this is a different reason that a lot of people can end up shifting their hips. Now in Dean's case, I would say that it's because he's getting pulled forward as he initiates the lift, which is causing him to drift almost out in front of the bar and pull off of his toes a little bit too much. So I would say, again, one of the biggest keys is patience. So slow it down off the floor, don't rush it, really try to make it a push. Think about doing a leg press, pushing the floor away, more so than trying to pull up on the bar. Those cues can help a lot of the time. The other big thing I would say with Dean here is to make sure you start that push a little bit more on your heels. Let's try and keep that whole foot engaged and don't let yourself rock forward onto your toes as you initiate your deadlift. Our next video submission comes from Elias. Now Elias is a young guy, he's 17 years old. He doesn't have a coach, he's just kind of figuring stuff out on his own. He's from Sweden. Now I would say Elias has a pretty good handle on things. This is a sumo deadlift from side angle. And we can see, again, another similar thing. One of the reasons that it's happening here is we're not actually pulling the slack out of the bar. So what I want you to try to do, Elias, is I want you to try to pull yourself down into position. So I notice you're just kind of like sitting and then starting to pull on the bar. What I want you to do is actually pull yourself down from, a higher hip angle, pull yourself in. Start to engage the muscles of your upper back, flatten things out, use your lats to actually pull your torso into the bar a little bit and really try to load up your legs, your hips, your back, your trunk, everything. And work on getting tighter before you initiate the pull, because that's the biggest thing here. Is you're kind of like, I bet if I had the audio up here, we could hear like the click of the bar each time you pulled. And as per the sumo deadlift tutorial video that we just did recently for Omar's channel, That's something we want to try to avoid. We want to try to get into a position where we're pulled into tension before the lift is initiated. So that, I think, is the biggest reason that you are losing position off the floor. The other thing I would recommend, and this goes along with patience, we've talked about it a couple times now, is I would practice being purposefully slow off the floor. It looks like you're really trying to rush into the bar. Again, we want to kind of get into tension, ease the bar up, and then accelerate once we know everything's aligned in a relatively ideal fashion. Then we want to start accelerating into the bar. Now, Elias also sent a bench press video, and honestly, I don't see too much wrong with it. The one thing I'm going to say, Elias, is I want you to start pausing all your bench presses. It looks like we're maybe a little bit uncomfortable in that bottom range of motion, and it's kind of coming down, and you're like, whoa, get it off the chest. I want you to get comfortable with that bottom range of motion. Get comfortable with being tight, keeping the weight of the bar in your hands. Got to credit Rory Alter for that one. That's a really great cue that I like to use a lot. Don't let your chest take the bar weight. Keep the weight in your hands. Don't let it kind of unload on your chest. Don't skip that bottom range of motion, and get comfortable with that bar in the bottom range of motion. So our next video submission is some squats from Ben Blue. Now, aside from having a sweet name, we're gonna take a look at these squats. So first off, we're kind of just jittery in general with the unrack and with the walkout. So one thing I want you to try and do is I want you to try and work on bracing your trunk, on your breathing. So I want you to take a big deep breath, lock your ribs down, lock your lats, lock your obliques, get everything nice and tight, unrack the bar like you're already in a squat, and take a few small purposeful steps to step back, one step to set your stance, and then go. So let's try and eliminate some of the noise in your movements in terms of the unrack and the walkout. That's gonna be a start. I think if we can get that bracing down and get it feeling better, it's gonna solve some of the other issues with your squat. You mentioned that you are a little bit long femored and that you feel like you get some butt wink, and you definitely do. That's evident to a point. The biggest thing dealing with that is I would try for you, again, I'm gonna emphasize, work on that bracing and your breathing. And also I would try a wider stance. I would try toeing out a little bit more, maybe pushing the knees out a little bit more. Try and do some of these things to allow your hips to open up so you can drop into a bit of a better position without sort of your hips running into your femurs a little bit and causing that butt wink. So I think by widening up, it's worth a shot anyways. Try and see if we can sit a little bit deeper or to proper depth rather, without running into that sort of butt wink mechanic. Now we've got another angle on Ben's squat, and actually what I'm noticing here is we're collapsing in the ankles a little bit. Now collapsing in the ankles is gonna lead to your lower limb caving and your hips not staying properly externally rotated and a bunch of weird things like that, which can also bunch up the structures of your hips and cause you to fall into that butt wink pattern. So the other thing I would look at is trying to use your feet better, stay a little more on the outsides of your feet, make sure you're engaging your feet and all that kind of stuff, and just try to stay planted into the ground and don't let your ankles roll in. Don't let your ankles roll in and collapse like that, because that's gonna cause a lot of issues up the chain. And lastly, we have Ben's conventional deadlift here. Now, your conventional deadlift, Ben, the only thing you really need to work on is just being patient. Again, there's a bit of a theme to this video. We're seeing a lot of people deadlifting with that sort of hip rise fault. Ben, most things for you look like they're definitely in place, but we need to work on that patience. And that is gonna be the number one key, is being a little bit more patient off the floor, so we're able to stay in a good technique and brace it without sacrificing position, which makes it a little bit easier to break off the floor, but can cause some issues later in the movement. Hopefully that helps, man. And our last one here comes from Steven. Now Steven's doing a sumo deadlift here, and right at the instant that you initiate the pull, Steven, the shoulder blades and the shoulders are rolling forward. So I think the biggest thing for you is gonna be making sure that as you initiate the lift, you're really maintaining a lot of contraction in the lats and keeping those shoulder blades glued down to your rib cage, not allowing them to slide forward, pulling you out of position and causing that little bit of a janky lockout. I think that's gonna lead to a better back angle. It's gonna lead to a better lockout. It's gonna do a lot of things for you, but it's probably gonna feel tougher off the floor to start with. So dial it back a little bit. Think about trying to keep those shoulder blades in position, and that should go a long ways for you. Anyways, guys, that's it for today. That was Form Check Friday. We had a couple of random submissions from November. I messed up, and part of my inbox was grayed out, and I didn't look at the dates and blah, blah, blah. But congratulations to those two lucky sons of bitches. And I apologize to anybody who got skipped in the line, but we're back. Everything's good. We're all running on schedule here. And we're up to September 23rd right now. So we'll see you guys next Friday for more of these. If you want to submit, calgarybarbell2@gmail.com. Thanks again, guys.